at the port, hoping to crash into the U.S. Navy ship Mercy, which is now anchored there.
The Mercy hospital ship not at all damaged by this crazy plot. They're still bringing in patients, all with non-corona-related virus illnesses. They're doing that so, as you know, they can free up the hospital beds and other facilities across Southern California. As we talk about the engineer, he has a date in federal court later this week. Prosecutors say not going to be hit now with a charge of terrorism. Instead, the engineer facing a charge of intentionally wrecking a train, but that's a federal charge, and it could bring, if found guilty, 20 years in prison.
That's reporter Ed Laskos of Fox 11 in L.A., who adds the man says he believed the Mercy was part of a government plot. 3 more southern states issuing orders to their residents to stay at home: Mississippi, Georgia, and Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis tells Fox's Hannity.
We don't have it running rampant in every corner of Florida, but I thought it was the prudent thing to do at this juncture.
President Trump telling Wednesday's coronavirus task force briefing he does not think a nationwide order to shelter in place is needed right now.
There are some states that are different. There are some states that don't have much of a problem. There are some, well, they don't have the problem. They don't have thousands of people that are positive, or thousands of people that even think they might have it, or hundreds of people in some cases.
What is under consideration, the president says, is an order to limit air travel from domestic hotspots from the virus. State of New York nearing 2,000 deaths from COVID-19, nearly 1,400 of those in New York City. Nationally, there are 215,000 infections and more than 5,100 deaths. The mayor of Los Angeles now urging residents to wear face masks when they venture out for critical needs. America is listening to Fox News.
Guam is home to strong and resolved people. As an island, we regularly deal with the destructive forces of nature together. We at Security Title know that when the storm passes, our families and neighbors will join together to clear the debris, to barbecue whatever is thawing in our freezers, and get back to the business of wholeheartedly living our lives. As our island struggles with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, let us remember that this too shall pass.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
President Trump says U.S. intelligence has uncovered a plan by Iranian-backed militia in Iraq to attack U.S. troops.
The president sending a sharp warning to the Iranian leadership about what might be in the works in Iraq in the coming days. The president tweeting, upon information and belief, Iran or its proxies are planning a sneak attack on U.S. troops and or assets in Iraq. If this happens, Iran will pay a very heavy price indeed. Sources tell Fox News the sneak attack was apparently being planned by Iranian-backed proxies in Iraq.
Fox's John Roberts at the White House when militia attacked a U.S. base last month, killing 2 Americans. The U.S. responded with rocket attacks on militia camps and weapon systems. The Coast Guard warning cruise ships headed to Florida they may have to stay offshore and treat infected passengers and crew on board.
2 Holland America cruise ships remain stuck at sea with 2,500 people on board, including at least 9 with coronavirus. The ships, the Zaandam and the Rotterdam, are sailing between Cuba and Florida with the hope they can come ashore sometime Thursday in Fort Lauderdale. But so far, the Unified Command, which controls the port, has failed to agree on a plan. All the passengers have been sequestered in their cabins for nearly 2 weeks now. Among the passengers are about 300 Americans. At Port Everglades, Phil Keating, Fox News.
The Food and Drug Administration telling drug makers to immediately pull a type of heartburn drug from store shelves due to contamination with a chemical that could be a cancer causer. Companies have already recalled dozens of lots of Zantac and similar drugs. The FDA had earlier said patients could continue to take them because the risk was low, but regulators now say the levels of the chemical increase in the body over time. The Dow dropping more than 970 points Wednesday, but overnight Dow futures are ahead nearly 300 points. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Social distancing math. Tossie is infected with COVID-19. She still goes out because she and her friends think it doesn't affect them. Tossie infects 3 friends. Each one infects 3 more. In 30 days, 244 people are infected, including someone's Nana. Most recover, but Nana dies. Reduce your social contact. If you only infect one person, in 30 days, the virus spreads to only 4 people. Stay home, stop the spread, save lives.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, 2 lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Start the program that way every day. I always pay a lot of attention to the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, individual freedom, libertarian and conservative causes, people who would attempt to interfere with our freedom. I spend a fair amount of time talking about our government and what the government does, and often refer to Real Joe Cruz to ask him to describe not what it was that the government does, but
what it didn't do.
There you go. So this is Tall Tales. The first feature on Tall Tales is what we call Zemi Ikotni. So I look at the editorials, or what passes for editorials in our 2 daily newspapers, fact-check them, check the validity of the theoretical underpinnings of each of the editorials. I give them sort of a tacit grade on readability and punch and punchiness. I look for a punch line at the end. And I'm always asking that an editorial would make me think, I know something now that I didn't know before, or I've been called to do something that I might not have done, or other people have been called to do things that they really should have done. And when I find the better of the 2 editorials, I take my blue pencil here, and I would give that editorial the coveted blue star. And you've heard me say this before, careers have been made and broken based on who gets that coveted blue star. And before we started the Wuhan virus isolation routine that we're all suffering from right now, back in the day when the editorial boards of each of the newspapers met in the editorial board room, my clever quip was that after I had awarded the coveted blue star, you could hear the champagne corks popping out in front of the building housing the winning newspaper. But I suspect that the editorial staffs, the editorial boards of both newspapers are operating digitally now, which I have to very snottily say will not be much of an adjustment for the Daily News because they've been operating digitally for the last year. Because most of the time what they do is copy and paste something online from the USA Today News Service or Gannett News Service. Today, however, is one of those days that's different, where the Daily News actually has its own editorial, as does the Post. And this is a good way to start the program because the contrast between the two editorials kind of highlights the contrast of where we are here on the island, and it's going to give me the opportunity to share with you what I think people ought to think of us here, because we're playing on the international stage now. We're not just a small island in the Western Pacific. We are headlines all over the world, all over the country. And as one of our posters so aptly put it, that would be a gentleman named Ishmael. Ishmael says that the China-originated virus infectious disease 2019 can be credited with taking the first American aircraft carrier out of commission since World War II, as the vessel currently rests moored at Naval Station Guam with its crew quarantined. While this is happening, the Chinese continue to flex its maritime muscle, pushing its naval force further into the Pacific. Very good observations, Ishmael. And anytime you have something like the Wuhan virus, of course, it's news no matter where it strikes. But here we are with an aircraft carrier, a fully loaded aircraft carrier, planes, ammo, fuel, etc., ready to go to war, but not going to war because the Wuhan virus is in the process of trying to infect the crew members and sicken them. So we'll get into this later on, but the Navy's fix is to take crew members off the TR, the Teddy Roosevelt, house them in various hotels on island in isolation to limit the spread of the coronavirus. Okay, so kind of setting the stage here for the Daily News editorial. Here we go. During crisis, governor must be transparent. I'd probably be the last guy in the world to argue with that statement. Our community needs our elected leaders and the military to be much more open and transparent with information related. I always have to apologize here. I edit the materials that I read because they use the phrase coronavirus crisis that doesn't fit into the Tall Tales lexicon. Here on Tall Tales, we talk about the Wuhan virus, the virus that originated in Wuhan, China, which the Chinese pretty much kept to themselves and allowed to spread worldwide. Whether they did it volitionally or accidentally, I haven't yet ruled, but I will one of these days. But to give it some neutral name like coronavirus or COVID-19 doesn't do that virus justice. So here on Tall Tales, we talk in terms of the Wuhan virus. Okay, on March 24, 4 sailors who tested positive for the Wuhan virus on the USS Teddy Roosevelt were medically evacuated from the carrier to Naval Hospital Guam. The aircraft carrier docked on Guam March 27 with more than 5,000 aboard the ship, and the number testing positive jumped to 23 people. Both military and civilian officials said the crew would be kept pierside, and there would be no interaction between the sailors from the aircraft carrier and people from the base or the community. Crystal Paco, who now goes by the name of Crystal Paco St. Augustine, press secretary for the governor's office, said on March 27, it's entirely a military operation. What's been communicated to us is that they have no intent to tax or utilize our local resources to address the situation. In a 4-page letter dated Monday, Captain Brett Crozier of the USS Teddy Roosevelt said decisive action was required to prevent death from the coronavirus. Now, I got to stop here for a second. And Captain Crozier's letter raises a lot of questions, too. I've seen a copy of the letter, and it's kind of hard to tell who it's addressed to. And it wasn't published by naval sources. It was published in a newspaper called the San Francisco Chronicle. So, speculating a little bit, was this something that Captain Crozier attempted to really slide under the radar in such a manner that it didn't have an address on it? Did Captain Crozier leak the letter to the San Francisco Chronicle? Did someone in the transmission, in the chain of transmission, leak the letter to San Francisco Chronicle? Because if you read the letter, the tenor of the letter was, you guys are not paying enough attention out here. I've got a serious problem. You need to help me deal with it. That was the tenor of the letter. And when his letter became public, a lot of chunky stuff hit the fan very quickly. So, Captain Crozier's letter. Crozier requested that about 90% of the thousands of individuals aboard be moved ashore to isolate, while 10% remain to operate and sanitize the ship. U.S. Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral John Aquilino said on Wednesday morning teleconference the Navy is working with the governor of Guam to find places to quarantine and isolate sailors. Sailors who have tested negative will be housed in hotels, won't be allowed on beaches. Security will be provided by the military. The military didn't detail where the sailors would be housed. Given the tightly packed quarters of any military ship, it's clear sailors wouldn't be able to practice CDC guidelines for social distancing. The Navy should have been more forthright about its needs with the community. And Governor Leon Guerrero and her team should have disclosed her discussions with the military at a much earlier point, given the degree on impact it will have on the public. During the Wuhan virus crisis, we need more openness and transparency, not less. Well, I'm going to start out with the last sentence of that editorial and say, yes, sir. And I've been extremely critical of the governor shutting down the open government law. I don't think I'm afraid that that's not the end of it. I'm afraid that's just a symptom of her lack of openness, her sense of openness and transparency. Now, with respect to the events described here, I think it's really critical that one knows how that Crozier letter got out. And that's why I stopped in mid-editorial to talk in terms of the Crozier letter and how it wound up in the San Francisco Chronicle. But if I were to enter my appearance on behalf of Captain Crozier and Admiral Aquilino, I'd have to say this. You know, the situation that we're dealing with now with the Wuhan virus is something that changes on a daily basis. It's something that no one has had much experience in dealing with. And it is a situation in which real leaders have to do what in football we would call audibles. Football fans know that the team in the huddle is in the huddle. The quarterback will call a play. He'll say, okay, we're going to run 22 spin. And when they get to the line of scrimmage and he sees that the defense is lined up in a different manner than what he had assumed they would set up, instead of going with 22 spin, he calls out an audible in some kind of a code and says something like 23 skidoo, 14, 12, which means we're not going to run the play we'd planned on because the situation has changed. Commanders of ships, I suspect, must be very good at doing that very thing. Because when a ship, a warship, is afloat, the unexpected probably is the rule. The ocean can be very unpredictable. The captain has to make sure he's got enough beans and bullets for his crew and for the fight. He's got all of the navigation considerations to think of. If it's an aircraft carrier, he's got a squadron or two of airplanes on board. So this is not a job, for the weekend gamesman. So when Crozier found out that he had the Wuhan virus aboard a ship, well, naturally, what's he going to want to do? He's going to want to get those sailors treatment. He gets them up to Naval Hospital. He finds out a little bit more about the Wuhan virus, and he determines that he cannot bring about the necessary conditions of isolation on board his ship. That's where his letter comes in. We don't know. We can only speculate as to whether or not that was his first attempt to get the necessary permission to house his crew ashore and get them off that carrier. But all things considered, I think this might not be the best time for all of us to hunker down in our armchairs and pretend that we are NFL quarterbacks, as we call these plays. I'd only make one exception there. There could only be one armchair quarterback. And I guess you could probably figure out who that's going to be. But other than me, let's knock that off, Daily News. And if the governor is talking with the admiral, anyone who's ever been in any sort of negotiation probably understands that there are times when the fewer people who know about the negotiation, the more successful it might become. There is a certain tactical expertise in negotiating. So if the governor decided that she had to sit down and talk with the admiral about this, or Captain Crozier or the admiral, the Joint Region Marianas, whichever, it may very well have been a tactical decision that she made. I'm not going to say anything about this until I have an agreement with the Navy. If that's the case, then I'd say, good for you, Governor. Good for you. Anyhow, that's the Daily News editorial, winding up by saying Governor Leon Guerrero and her team should have disclosed her discussions with the military at a much earlier point, given the degree on impact it will have on the public. Now, as the thing has been described, I wonder what the impact is going to be on the public, because this is what I have read. The sailors from the Teddy Roosevelt, those who were brought ashore, will be brought from the Teddy Roosevelt to various hotels, and I could understand why we wouldn't want to publicize which hotels that they're going to. I suspect the longer it takes for Sabina Paris to find out which hotel, the longer it will be before she and her ilk will be out in front of the hotel with signs saying, "Sailor, go home." So the sailors will be ensconced in these hotels. They'll be guarded to see that they can't leave. They'll have to stay in their rooms, and the hotel staff will not be interacting with the sailors. There will be military types who, as I understand it, bring the food, clean the rooms, et cetera, et cetera. So the risk of exposure for the hotel staff is probably no greater than the risk any of us has when he leaves his house and goes shopping, for instance. So I think that there's a little tendency here to sensationalize. Governor Leon Guerrero and her team should have disclosed her discussions with the military at a much earlier point, given the degree of impact it will have on the public. But then the Daily News recovers by saying, during the Wuhan virus crisis, we need more openness and transparency, not less. A proposition I will not argue with. Okay, and then the other approach is in the Post. Helping warship sailors was the right call for Guam. The nearly 5,000 sailors serving on the Wuhan virus-stricken USS Teddy Roosevelt are the sons, daughters, siblings, parents, and spouses of families across the United States, including Guam. So when the Navy asked Governor Leon Guerrero to allow many of the aircraft carrier's sailors to be quarantined in certain hotels, at least those who haven't yet been infected with the virus that causes Wuhan virus, the governor made the right call. The governor on Wednesday announced she's okay with the use of certain Guam hotels for accommodations for the warship sailors who haven't been infected with the pneumonia-like disease. The Navy made the request after the warship's captain made the plea to move the majority of the sailors off the ship in light of the reported rapid rise of Wuhan virus cases on the aircraft carrier, which pulled into Guam port last week after a visit to Vietnam. It wasn't an easy decision, the governor acknowledged, but as long as the Navy abides by the restrictions to ensure the sailors will not be allowed into the local community, Leon Guerrero felt it is Guam's obligation to also provide a place for the warship's crew to wait out the 14-day quarantine in a humane facility. The restrictions include keeping infected sailors isolated within the military facilities, testing each sailor and making sure it says he or she is free of the disease. I don't think that's what they mean. What do you think they mean there, Real Joe Cruz?
Probably they, sir.
Yeah. Never use he. If he or she is part of your vocabulary, stricken it from your vocabulary and replace it with they. Otherwise, people will think you're not woke. Okay, so testing each sailor and making sure they are free of the disease before the transfer to quarantine-designated hotels. Conducting daily medical checkups at quarantine areas. Military providing security on every floor and at all points of entry at the hotel. Using only hotels that are currently empty. And I talked about this yesterday. What a deal for hotels that are standing there currently empty. Keeping beaches off limits for the sailors as it is for the general public, and the military providing personal protective gear to any hotel worker who is part of the hotel staff during the quarantine. And to ensure Guam's strained healthcare system does not get the additional weight of caring for service members, the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force will send about 40 medical professionals to Guam to take care of the sailors and help enhance the capabilities of Naval Hospital Guam. That's a pretty good deal. I read one report that said that the members of that the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force team may even help in the civilian community. The Navy also announced that there will be layers of security provided by the military to ensure the sailors who are quarantined in Guam hotels will not sneak into the local communities. I know there will be a small chorus of cynics who will oppose this position, but now is not the time for us or them. Sorry, Governor, but for that small group of cynics, and I wouldn't compliment them by calling them cynics. They aren't just cynics. They are people with a mission to undermine your government and undermine the government of the United States. So they're not just cynics. Okay, first break. Be right back in a minute.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so I'm reading still working on the editorial in the Post, and I'll read the last sentence again. The governor said, "I know there will be a small chorus of cynics who will oppose this position, but now is not the time for the us versus them." And those who practice grievance politics, those who are looking for something to complain about with respect to the government of Guam or the United States government, will see this Governor Leon Guerrero. They will have a field day with this. And you saw a small taste of that in what was attributed to Sabina Paris in yesterday's Daily News. She is really disappointed with you for doing what she characterized as a flip-flop. I'll get back to that a little bit later on. But you're right, Governor Leon Guerrero. This is not the time for us versus them. And then the quote goes on to say, while there are sailors on board that ship from every corner of the nation, some of those sailors call Guam home. The governor said they sat at King's with friends on a Friday night. They graduated from places like Simon Sanchez and George Washington. They're our nieces, our nephews, our sons, daughters, grandsons, and granddaughters. And we can protect Guam while being humane to them, the governor added. That's the Guam I know, and we will not abandon who we are out of fear. So once again, we're in this quest to know who we are, Real Joe Cruz. And I have a feeling that Governor Leon Guerrero is not who Michael Bavacqua is, but that's speculation. The quote goes on to say, every decision we make during this pandemic is made and will continue to be made with the health and safety of our people in mind. And then back to the editorial. In light of Guam's continuing rise in COVID-19 cases, GovGuam's decision to let the aircraft carrier sailors into Guam's hotel is a risk and a sacrifice the island community is making. We hope the military leadership at the Guam level, at Pacific Fleet in Honolulu, and main decision makers at Pentagon will see and remember the kindness Guam has shown. We hope the military will reciprocate our community's gesture with transparency, candor, and respect for local rules, traditions, and sensitivities. I think as far as local rules are concerned, if we could just keep the United States Attorney in line. Fortunately for all of us, the United States Attorney does not wear a Navy uniform. We know from a recent incident the military doesn't always see Guam as a partner. Not long ago, Guam Army, National Guard, and Reserve families felt hurt when the Navy restricted guardsmen and reservists who aren't on active duty from buying essential items on the Navy Base Exchange and commissary stores on weekdays, amid a run on supplies and stores outside the base fence. The restriction was lifted after Navy-based leadership was called out. There will be times when the military's sincerity to work with the local community will be tested. And when that happens, they need to remember the risk Guam took by standing with them today and in many other challenging times in the past of our country. Okay, so I'm going to hang on to my blue pen for a second, and big surprise. It's another Joe on the line.
No way.
Yeah, it's another Joe. Who else but another Joe, right? I hardly finished with Zemi Ikotny, and I've got another Joe. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Yeah, sorry, Kubal. You can tell that as a kid I was that nerd sitting in the front. Always raising my hand.
Did you have this, what we used to call the Spring Butt Award, Uncle, another Joe?
Well, I came close to being teased as a teacher's pet, except that the teacher wasn't always thrilled with my questions.
Okay.
But anyway, I wanted to give a perspective or take on this. They're saying, "Oh, us versus them." I would say in this case, Uncle Bob, it's us, the whole world, versus those exotic Wuhan meat markets. Because the theory was that this virus mutated because of these exotic meat markets, where you know they can't resist eating all kinds of critters. You know, it's kind of like the Chinese version of Appalachian hillbillies. You know, oh man, that's a nice dead-looking possum or coon there on the road. I better make good use of that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, everyone in the world, when it calms down, Kabal, we should criticize the Chinese and say, hey, stick to your grocery stores, man. Stop going to these exotic meat markets where they're going and catching these animals in a lot of cases illegally. But what do you think about that, Kabal?
Yeah, I agree. And of course, the bigger picture is that not only are we at war with the Wuhan virus, we're not at war with China, but we're not best friends forever either, another Joe.
Yeah, and that's why I identify with what President Trump was saying. You know, the art of the deal, so to speak. Why make it easy, right? If you do your best in making a deal, everybody gets what they can out of the deal, and it's the best deal possible. You know, I'm sorry I'm not that good at articulating it, but I had a sense that Trump knew what he was doing when he was making it difficult, and he put these restrictions on China for travel early on, even if they were criticizing him. So anyway, that was the main point I wanted to bring up there, Bob. Also, I'll leave you with this other thought. You know, I don't know if it's coincidental, but they had this pilot, man, they started, I don't know if it's still ongoing, they call it The Last Ship, where this Navy vessel, right, was the last hope of the world, and they took these scientists out to get the cure for a virus. Have you ever heard of that pilot, The Last Ship, Uncle Bob?
No.
So I just wanted to leave you with that thought. You guys can maybe look it up later and see how ironic it is, the plot. Well, thanks for your time, Uncle Bob, and take care. I'll keep listening.
All right. It's always a pleasure, another Joe. Okay, so I'm in communication here with the world outside the very sanitary studios of Tall Tales here, where I can't even reach out to the real Joe Cruz because there are 2 panes of glass between the real Joe Cruz and I.
There's a lot more pain than that, sir, between us.
Oh, you got it, real Joe Cruz. A lot of pain there. That guy has a way with words, doesn't he? So having communicated with the outside world, I'm going to spend a little time here with some of the Facebook comments, which I've been eyeballing out of the corner of my eyeball. Ishmael Velez says the China-originated virus infection disease. Yeah, okay, I already read that. He says that it has taken an aircraft carrier out of commission for the first time since World War II. And then I scroll down, and R. Carl says it's either opportunism in a bad world situation or something planned. If planned, it's pretty ingenious. Prudencio Mano, happy hotels reopening for sailors, stay likely up to a month. Good news to bring back employees. Well, that's very true, Prudencio. And scrolling down here a little bit more. James Howard, mark my words, one day I will attain the coveted blue star. This is my mission. Well, that's good, James. Aim high. And reach for the apparently unreachable. Never let your grasp exceed your reach, or something like that. And then Frenchie's here. Good afternoon. Okay, I suspect some of the Frenchie fans are saying, all right, Frenchie's on board. I hope he calls in. And R. Carl says, let's see here. And I've got some humor here from Andrew Camacho. Andrew Camacho says, end of quarantine. Knock, knock, knock. Good morning, sir. Your 2-week quarantine is over. You can go home now. How is it out there? There are more than 70 positive cases and 3 deaths. I'm good. I'll stay here. Sir, you have to go home. I'm not going out there and risk getting infected. Come back and check with me again in December. That's Andrew's knock-knock joke, I guess. And then James Howard says, Frenchie, please call in. We need more info on China attack, on the China attack. Thank you. I liked your page, by the way. Okay, so I don't know how to break this to you, Real Joe Cruz, but it looks like Frenchie is developing a cult of personality here on Tall Tales.
I was getting a feeling about that, but I happen to be a Frenchie fan myself.
Okay.
So there you go.
All right. And let's see. Yeah, and then R. Carl says, oh no, another cult of personality beside the Real Joe Cruz cult. Yeah. And then Ishmael Velez, James Howard, I got a blue eye once. Well, if your name is Ishmael, I guess that figures. Jesse Limtiaco, I can't imagine if this didn't leak out. We may have never known. Okay, this, I don't know what he means by this. Okay. Military Navy hospitals confirmation of cases and error. That's from a Post article. Yeah, there was, it was hard to get good information from anybody about anything in the beginning because almost everyone was dealing with something that they didn't know about and understand. Okay, except right here on Tall Tales, of course. And going on down, Jesse Limtiaco. Jesse, you've been listening to Two Tall Tales too long. Jesse Limtiaco says, sounds like the negotiations are a personnel matter. Yeah, if Governor Lujan Guerrero had only thought of that, you know, when a reporter said, Governor, why didn't you tell us about this before? Well, I couldn't. It's a personnel matter. Very good, Jesse. And I've got Jessanette Banico. I was wondering, are we extending the lockdown and are more getting sick? Any updates? Well, the updates come fast and furious every day in the daily papers and on TV. And it looks like if I were to gaze in my crystal ball, I would say that the local lockdown is not going to end on April 13th. My suspicion is that it'll go all the way to the end of the month of April. I don't have an official source. No one has been whispering in my ear. That's just my prognostication. Going on to James Howard, maybe they should clean their own rooms. Just deliver them food, water, and beer. He's talking about the sailors in the hotel rooms. Ishmael Velez, opportunist. Come on. The CEO had many forms of communication available to communicate with 7th Fleet, Pacific Command. Releasing a letter to the media is a liberal MO. I wonder what was the PACCOM guidance to PAC Fleet about the carrier. Most likely keep this ship in theater. Crew swaps or augmented manning can easily be done from Guam while keeping the lights on and the reactors running. Well, and that's part of my speculation, Ismo. My speculation was that those channels of communication were used by the captain of the Teddy Roosevelt, and he was not getting the result that he was looking for, and therefore engineered the leak of that letter. That's just pure speculation, nothing more. But that's occasionally what people do, and of course that is a liberal MO. And I will make a prognostication here. I suspect that Captain Crozier's career is going to be severely stunted after this tour, because regardless of how that letter got out, it's not going to do his career any good. Interesting observation, Ismail. And James Howard says this carrier situation is starting to smell like Pearl Harbor all over again. Now, I think what James is saying is that there are a lot of theories that the military brass or President Roosevelt knew that the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was coming, but let it happen in order to get the United States into World War II. A lot of books have been written about that, and I suspect that's what you're perhaps alluding to, James. The other possibility is that if you study Pearl Harbor, there was a fair amount of negligence involved also when people ignored rather obvious signs that something was amiss. So one way or the other, I suspect that's what you're alluding to, James Howard. Ishmael Velez comes back and says, quarantine sailors, 2 weeks free leave with pay, their own rooms with a view, room service. Paradise. I suppose for some of the sailors, they'll look at it that way. The E3s cooped up in compartments, 15 decks below the water with very little to do except work. Jesse Limtiaco, we are the people that turn around a cruise ship, though. Well, a false equivalency, Jesse. That's all I'm going to say. That is a false equivalency. I see what you're trying to do, and I think you're the very people, one of the very persons that the governor was talking about when she said, I know there will be a small chorus of cynics who will oppose. Yeah. Cruise ship is not an aircraft carrier, Jesse Limtiaco. Our Carl chimes in. Not too surprising. Many people have had their views radicalized in the majority of universities across America. Neo-Marxism has made major inroads into academia, especially in the humanities and social sciences, the soft sciences. It's happening on Guam. Many professors and students are open neo-Marxist. And I go along with that, Carl. I think that's what Frenchie was alluding to yesterday when we were talking about Sabina Paris. Okay, and then Jesse Limtiaco is back. Gov Guam, will you be more transparent? Admiral, sure, but sometimes it may be a personnel matter. Okay. The magic words. I can't tell you about that. It's a personnel matter. Ismail Velez, Bob, the Chinese declared war. Look, we have all service members in boot camp who can't train. We have those who completed boot camp who can't leave for their schools. We have all the new recruits who can't report to boot camp. We have active duty members in Guam and everywhere else who have shipped their household goods in preparation to PCS and now can't leave the island and are living with nothing. We have service members in trade schools who also can't train, and those completed training cannot depart to their duty stations. Our armed forces are in a holding pattern. The Chinese declared war. Well, that's speculation, but I read something about asynchronous warfare, and if that's what they're up to, if that's what they did, they're getting a pretty good ride out of it, aren't they? Carl Bora Nelson, shameful, especially with all the cruise ships defending the islands against China's expansionism. Okay, short break here, and then I'll finish the Facebook comments and go into the card.
If you own a Toyota, please listen to this. It could help you avoid injury, maybe save your life. The Takata airbags installed in certain Toyotas can explode and shoot out sharp metal fragments at people inside the vehicle. You don't need to be in a collision. They could explode any time. In the U.S., these airbags have caused 26 deaths. There's been a worldwide recall of Takata airbags, and most have had the faulty parts replaced. But here in Guam, there are still over 3,000 Toyotas on the road with potentially lethal airbags, and yours could be one of them. So please, take your Toyota to Atkins Crow, even if you didn't buy it from us, and get the inflator replaced. It costs you nothing, it takes just about an hour, and it could save a life, yours or someone you love. The AK song says we're here for life. That's never been more true.
At Atkins Crow, we're here for life.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title when you absolutely need confidentiality in your real estate transactions.
Okay, so here we are again. James Howard is answering the theory propounded by another Joe when he says, sorry, caller, don't fall for the bat cool, and guy is a bigger than that. So I think what James Howard is trying to say is this theory that this originated in an exotic animal market. Maybe not. I think James Howard likes the idea that this is a beginning of some asynchronous warfare. Jesse wants to know if, Carl, are Chinese still able to buy land on Guam? I guess if they've got the money. Carl Nelson, treatment of the cruise ship passengers infected for testing of all passengers will deplete our limited resources in testing and treating and testing our island residents. Military personnel will be treated using military resources. Big difference, Jess. And I see a much bigger difference between a cruise ship that wasn't scheduled to even stop here. A cruise ship is a commercial business compared to a military ship that was on a defense mission. A cruise ship is not an aircraft carrier. And then, let's see here. Jesse Lemtiaco, maybe I am being too cynical, he says, lol. Carl Bora Nelson, yes, they can. If we separate with the U.S., they'll come armed with millions of dollars to buy influence with our senators and governor. How much money will it take to influence politicians to sell out our island? Jesse Lemtiaco, Carl, aren't they doing that now? Frenchie, glad James is reaching for the stars. Denise Legaspi is here, as is Don Edkilani, who gives me a link to a Wikipedia article, The Last Ship. Okay, I'll take a look at that tonight, maybe. It's a TV series, apparently. Denise. I have the same idea of when the governor ends the quarantine. End of the month, Carl Bora Nelson. I saw an article from Frenchie which stated that over 20 years ago, the Chinese military leader realized they can't win in a direct conventional war. They opted for a multi-pronged unconventional war, unlimited war, internet war, etc. They've been at war with us for over 20 years. Okay, I've got Adrian on the line. Adrian, I've only got a couple minutes here before the halftime show. So if you'd like, could you hang on through the halftime show or call back after the halftime show? Either way would be acceptable, and then we'll put you on right after the halftime show. And last thing from Don Edkilani, the captain of the Teddy Roosevelt put his crew before himself. So we hope his crew understands that logic and remembers him for the remainder of their lives. Okay, big halftime show. I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Big City Mayor says put a mask on. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. LA's Mayor Eric Garcetti telling residents if they leave home, wear a face mask to help slow the spread of the coronavirus.
If you are working in an essential business or you're coming into frequent contact with others and you need non-medical cloth face coverings, we're here to help.
But not medical or surgical masks, which the mayor says need to be saved for medical personnel. Garcetti says an LA-based clothing manufacturer will produce 2 million cloth masks per week. President Trump praising those on the front lines of the pandemic fight at Wednesday's coronavirus task force briefing.
They walk in men, women, young, middle-aged, not so many older ones. And I watch them. They're almost like, and I think I take the word almost out, they're like warriors. They're going in. People are cheering. Where there's a building across the street, the people are screaming, they're clapping. They're like heroes.
But there's a disturbing report that first responders in New York are being told if they cannot revive heart attack patients on scene, not to transport them to hospitals already swamped with coronavirus cases. One worker telling the New York Post they're trying to do what they can with the people who have the most likely chance of being saved. New York has nearly 84,000 diagnosed cases of the virus. New hope for those critically ill with it.
Until there is a vaccine, soon those fighting for their lives will receive blood plasma from people who have recovered, like Jason Garcia, whose plasma was transfused into an ICU patient.
Glad that this turned into a positive thing.
The plasma treatment shows a lot of promise, but is incredibly cumbersome and requires significant amounts of data and testing on those who've recovered to see if they're able to donate.
Fox's Leland Vittert, Dr. Deborah Birx of the Coronavirus Task Force issuing a challenge to researchers and medical schools to help with developing the data on serology treatments. America is listening to Fox News.
Guam is home to strong and resolved people. As an island, we regularly deal with the destructive forces of nature together. We at Security Title know that when the storm passes, our families and neighbors will join together to clear the debris, to barbecue whatever is thawing in our freezers, and get back to the business of wholeheartedly living our lives. As our island struggles with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, let us remember that this too shall pass.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
A court in Pakistan has overturned the murder conviction of a British Pakistani man who'd been found guilty of kidnapping and murdering journalist Danny Pearl. Instead, the court has found that Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh is guilty of a lesser charge of kidnapping. He's been sentenced to 7 years in jail. Danny Pearl was beheaded back in 2002. At least 2 congressional Democrats are calling for a congressional investigation of the government's response to the coronavirus outbreak.
After Pearl Harbor and 9/11, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff says Congress looked at what went wrong and learned from mistakes. He and the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Democrat Benny Thompson, are drafting legislation to establish a bipartisan commission to look at how the federal government responded to the coronavirus pandemic. Thompson says Americans need answers on how government can work better to prevent a similar crisis. Schiff says any commission would not be initiated until the pandemic has passed. Following the 9/11 terror attacks, a commission's report found flaws in law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Congress effectively still in recess. Nearly 3,000 sailors aboard the U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt will be taken off the ship by tomorrow. Scores of crew members have tested positive for the virus, but the Secretary of the Navy says the vessel must remain staffed. It has a nuclear reactor, weapons, and expensive aircraft on board. The Theodore Roosevelt now anchored just offshore from Guam. A train engineer at the port of L.A. admits that he tried to crash a locomotive into the U.S. Navy hospital ship Mercy, now docked at the port. Prosecutors say the man believed the ship is there as part of a secret government plot. His attempt fell well short of the vessel. The governor of Wisconsin says he'll use National Guard troops to staff polling places for next Tuesday's primary election because poll workers have been calling in sick in droves. A federal judge Wednesday refusing to issue an order to postpone the primary voting in Wisconsin.
Rent, lease. What does Horizon do for you? Here's a clue. Advertising, marketing, screening, inspecting, instructing, leasing and signing, collecting and complying, inquiring and assessing, coordinating, repairing, renewing, enforcing, evicting, moving, cleaning, rekeying, communicating. Do it yourself and you'll find it taxing. We work hard to keep the vacancies low, so at the end of the month, you collect the dough. Proven and trusted. Horizon Properties. We do it all. 777-7792. The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So we've observed our big halftime show again. Nobody in the stands because of the Wuhan virus quarantines that we're all attempting to adhere to. And now it's time for the card. And I think I've only got 2 items on the card for today. Oh, yeah, that's right. Adrian, I almost forgot about Adrian. Thank you, Real Joke. Sorry, Adrian. Before I get into the card, I'm going to take Adrian's call. Good afternoon, Adrian.
Hey, thank you so much. Well, actually, I have 3 points. I'm going to make them real quick. Number 1, Captain Kosher is one of the best commanding, he was an executive officer when I worked for him, but he's one of the most decent and proper gentlemen I've ever worked for in my entire life. He's outstanding, and I got to say that, bar none, I think whatever decision he makes, he made for the best decision of his crew. He went to bat for me when I really needed it. And I won't give too many details, but that man is outstanding, and I would serve with him any day of the week. The second point, bar none, is this cracks me up. I mean, you can't help but listen to the news because we got nothing better to do than stay in our houses and twiddle our thumbs. But I think that the fact that we can just look at, Uganda, Sierra Leone, Chad, Afghanistan, Mali, Haiti, Ethiopia, any other country, and I'm sure they have the exact same resources the United States has to test for the coronavirus. And so the fact that America surpassed anyone else on the entire planet in cases is a testament to how well capitalistic society works, that we now have 4 General Motors My Pillow, which was mocked in the media idiotically by individuals who had no idea that he was turning over 70% of his company to help individuals in need. it's a testament to how well our industrial society works for its own people, and we are able to actually test the most people. Therefore, of course, we're going to find the most cases, and we're going to treat them. If you take a look at the death tolls, obviously ours are lower than many of our European allies, which are suffering because they don't have the ingenuity that we have. And the last point that I'll make is I think Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, and I mean this sincerely and with all due diligence, ought to be tried and executed for treason. They are most despicable, scumbaggish politicians on the face of the earth, and everything they've done to this country in the last 3 years have spat in the face of progress, not only here but overseas, because when America succeeds, our allies succeed. And we fund more foreign aid than any other country on the planet, and probably more than the top 15 combined. And so what they're doing right now in this new game they're about to try to play, where they're going to try to have another court appeal, another Senate hearing, where they assess how the federal government handled the coronavirus, is absolutely ludicrous. And this is just going to keep going until, one, America stands up and votes these scumbags out of office, or two, the federal government stands up and puts these people on trial and finds them guilty of treason and, for all due diligence, murder. Those are the 3 points I just want to put across to you.
Well, you got here just in time, Adrian. I can't say that I disagree with anything that you said. I especially like your evaluation of Nancy and Adam Schiff.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So,
well, I got to say, Captain Crozier is one of the best. I know that this situation seems fishy on the surface, but I'll tell you what, that man went to bat for me when no one else would. And as a low-ranking member of the United States Naval Forces, he stood up and fought for me when I really, really needed it, and justice came out. And I will forever be dedicated to him and whatever decision he made, because I know firsthand that that man made the decision that best suited his men, and I will attest to that hands down, bar none.
okay, Adrian, is this your first time on Tall Tales?
No, Bob, it's the third time. I'm getting closer. The first time I was asking what the heck is wrong with Guam's government. The second time I asked, I came in and I think we talked about Alexander Fraser Tyler, and this will be my third time. I'm unfortunately, your time slot is kind of when I'm not traveling and I'm trying to prepare dinner, but I've been a little bit better now that I have nothing better to do with my life besides sit here and look at the gorgeous Guam weather and record your shows, because they're amazing. And you and the morning show, Ray Gibson, my man, Ray Gibson. Yes, I've been calling to him as much as I can. So you guys are amazing. You are the rock of common sense on this island, and I greatly appreciate it. I think you guys are the only thing that are stabilizing the island from tipping over just in case too many Marines show up.
Well, it's hard for me to imagine how many Marines would be too many Marines. I think that it's impossible to have too many Marines, but the reason...
God bless you, sir, I agree.
The reason I asked that question is that we have a convention here on Tall Tales where I award a blue star to the better of the two editorials. Have you caught that?
I have. I do try to catch up on these tutorials that you blue star. Unfortunately, I think you're working with, well, you're doing the best you can with what you got. That's
right.
what I'll say.
Well, this may make your day, but one of our Facebook posters has nominated you for the blue star, given your comments.
I am beyond honored. Honored beyond belief. Well, even the day. I mean, you made my day. You made my entire coronavirus outbreak. I got to tell you.
So
There's no greater cause.
There you are, Adrian. There's your blue star.
You are the man, the legend, Bob. I greatly appreciate you. You keep on keeping on.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for calling in, Adrian.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay. So, good call. Good call.
It's callers like that make me They make me feel I'm doing something right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're
Sometimes.
the producer for Tall Tales. You're the real Joe Cruz PM, remember?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. How did you explain that? You're a real Joe Cruz PM when you're doing my show, and when you're doing Ray's show, you're real Joe AM. And how did you describe that? It's like
Dayquil and NyQuil.
Dayquil and NyQuil.
Real Joe NyQuil, Real Joe Dayquil.
So this is real Joe NyQuil,
yes,
huh?
Sir.
All right. So I'm going to get into the card. Here's an interesting post. Bob, this isn't the first time that we've helped U.S. sailors. Remember George Tweed during the Second World War, the Japanese occupation? Anybody who lives on Guam would never forget George Tweed, right? Everybody knows who George Tweed was.
My grandfather used to tell me about him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that they used to, him and Mr. Artero used to...
Hit him out.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to get into the card here. I'm going to start out with Sabina Flores versus the United States Navy, and that's the people that's the cynical people you're talking about, Lou. And then from there, I'm going to get back into the other issue that I think should not be forgotten, and that is I'm going to be one of the cynical ones for the governor. The governor's trashing of the open government law and the long-range importance of taking too much liberty with the rights of citizens in the face of an emergency. And I keep coming back to that question that I pose rhetorically almost every day. Can emergency create power? Because if the answer is yes, then power will create emergency. And I wonder if that's what we're looking at here, although I'm pretty happy with the way the governor is dealing with the sailors from the Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, going back here to Sabina Paris versus the USN. This is from a Daily News story, the title of which is Lack of Transparency Concerns Over U.S. Theodore Roosevelt Sailors on Guam. And this is an Adamita Carr story, K-A-U-R. Maybe I'm seeing something that's not there, but I tend to see a tilt towards the environmental fascists and, the environmental wackos and the cultural cubs and all of the other opposition are the people advancing those opposition tactics in an anti-American fashion. So Sabina was quoted this way: "A decision of this magnitude, which threatens the health and safety of us all, should not take place without the knowledge and consent of the people of Guam." That's talking about putting the sailors up in hotels. And of course, it was our governor that agreed to that decision. But she comes out and says, a decision of this magnitude, which threatens the health and safety of us all, should not take place without the knowledge and consent of the people of Guam. Well, if having our governor work something out with the admiral isn't at least token consent of the people of Guam, how else would we do it? Have something like a New England town meeting and have 160,000 people all gather in the university field house and handle it that way, at the same time maintaining a 6-foot distance from one another? Or should, before any decision is made, should all the members of the Crazy Eight be polled to make sure that they go along with the decision? Now, the Crazy Eight is, let's see, I had the Crazy Eight here somewhere else. Yeah, maybe I can't find it. Probably not. It's a group of eight organizations. The only one I can remember is Protehi Latexan, the ones that got all excited about that tree at Anderson that the Air Force, in a sense, saved. So Sabina said that, and then she goes on to say that the article goes on to say, on Wednesday morning, U.S. Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral John Aquilino said the Navy is working with Governor Leon Guerrero to find places to quarantine and isolate the sailors, and they're looking at hotels. Leon Guerrero on Facebook Live Wednesday morning confirmed that she has been in discussions with military officials. And then, the sudden change is alarming, according to Paris. The complete about-face is shocking and concerning and highlights either a lack of planning or a lack of transparency by the U.S. Navy, both of which are deeply concerned. Yeah, I'm really glad that Sabina Barris is so interested in how the Navy, how a commander, a captain of an aircraft carrier does his planning. Then Paris goes on to say, however, I am disturbed by the reckless double standard of potentially placing exposed military personnel in local hotels when we are already exploring housing our sick Manamco and the UOG Fieldhouse. I pray that they can have safer and speedier recoveries on base. But if sailors are placed in our hotels, we will be exposing lower-wage employees to greater risk, many of whom are older and have limited or no health benefits for themselves and their families. So when she says, I am disturbed by the reckless double standard of potentially placing exposed military personnel in local hotels when we are already exploring housing our sick Manamco and UOG Fieldhouse. That's directed at the governor. That's not directed at Captain Crozier. That's directed straight at you, Governor. So one of your loyal Democrats is taking you on. This is Louis.
Yes, sir.
Not Louis, but Louis.
I think so, sir.
Yeah. It sounds like a good title for a song, doesn't it?
It does, sir.
Yeah. Okay, Louis.
Yeah, Bob, are you taking a call?
Oh, yeah, it is Louis. My call screener said it was Louis, so I thought it was somebody from back in the 60s, but it's not Louis, it's just plain Louis.
Well, I kind of faded out, so you probably got some double feedback there.
Uh-huh. So,
you know, it occurs to me we're overanalyzing this situation with regards to the housing of the military and the personnel. I think there's a much simpler way of looking at this that you're definitely alluding to, but I'd like to suggest we paint the picture just a little clearer, and that is we have a bunch of American citizens that came to our shores who should be quarantined, similar to the people that got off the plane from the Philippines 2 weeks ago that were quarantined at a hotel. So if the government or governor has the authority to quarantine some American citizens in a particular place, why does she lose that right or need somebody's permission to quarantine another group of American citizens under exactly the same circumstances?
It's a good analysis, Louis. She certainly doesn't need Sabina Paris's permission to, as you say, do the same thing with these guys that got off a ship that she did with those folks that got off a plane, correct?
Yes. You know, I offer that the last thing any of us need to deal with this situation properly is any kind of us and them analysis or viewpoint. It hasn't happened for 102 years, but it's happening right now. Everybody on the planet is on this together.
Exactly. But, of course, if you're listening to the program, you'll know that I have identified a group that thrives on grievance politics, and it wouldn't matter how serious the situation if they can get out their axes and do a little axe grinding based on the presence of this Wuhan virus, you can bet they'll do it, and that's exactly what Sabina Paris is doing. And I suspect that she will not be the only one, Louis.
Call dropped, sir.
Oh, okay. No wonder it got quiet all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Louis makes a good point. You know what? We have a policy here. If you arrive from a foreign country and a means of transportation, we're going to pick you up and we're going to quarantine you in a hotel. That's what we did with folks who came in on an airplane. Some folks come in on a ship called an aircraft carrier. What would be wrong with doing the same thing with those folks that we did with the guns that came in on a plane? And Louis is exactly right. This is the last thing we need to do is get into this grievance politics, Sabina Paris, nagging. Why are you doing this? What about the people of Guam, etc.? So let's see. Is this Louis back? Okay. We lost you for a second, Louis.
Yeah, I got lost, just got reconnected. So, in a nutshell, if we take a look at this whole situation, it kind of reminds me, Bob, something that happened with the Board of Education kind of back when you were director. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember there was an incident where either you or one of the division heads made a report to the board about something, and one of the board members got real angry and said, "How come I wasn't told about this earlier?" And the response that either you or one of the division heads gave was, "Well, it just occurred. That's why we're informing you now." But the board member kept insisting, "How come I wasn't told about this earlier?" And so I think part of what's going on here, without getting into whether they're sailors or not, or whether they're local residents or not, is the issue that things are happening so fast that when the governor informs the island that we're going to quarantine some more people, we've got the old Board of Education scenario of, how come I wasn't told about this earlier? Well, it just happened. That doesn't matter. How come I wasn't told about it earlier?
That's no excuse.
Yeah.
That's a good analysis, Louis.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully saner heads will prevail.
Thanks again. You're one of them, Louis. So keep helping us out here in Tall Tales with your unfailing logical analyses that you're willing to share with us.
Anytime, Bob. You take care.
All right. So that was either Louis or Louis. How does that song go, Real Joe Cruz?
Louis. I don't know, sir.
All right. Okay. So back to Sabina Paris here. She says, however, I am disturbed by the reckless double standard of potentially placing exposed military personnel in local hotels when we are already exploring housing our sick Manamku and UOG field house. This is if Sabina could do it, she could fly in Greta Thunberg here to deliver this line for you. How dare you? This is the kind of cool-headed, even-handed leadership that we need in a legislature when we're dealing with this kind of crisis. And yesterday I went into the laundry list of the things that she wants. She wants to immediately mobilize military resources through the Defense Logistic Agency and other means necessary for treatment and care. I don't think anybody in the Navy would ever think of that. Or urge the president to utilize the Defense Production Act to efficiently spur the manufacturing of desperately needed medical supplies. This lady ought to run for president. Urge the Navy to evacuate non-essential staff from the Roosevelt in order to decontaminate the ship. I think that's exactly what they're doing.
I think she's reading from the policy book, sir.
Probably. Recommend to local military leaders. This says, Paris urged that the Department of Defense recommend to local military leaders to begin creating quarantine areas on naval base. They don't have to recommend, they can just order it, unless she's back to the governor again. Yeah, and that would make a lot of sense. Put them all in tents out there in the Roti Peninsula, all in the name of readiness, all in the name of quarantine. And then here's where I have I'm curious about Anamita Carr, because there were the 8 community groups that I read from another article, which I can't put my fingers on right now, where they were actually named, and they wrote a letter to the governor, and in that article they were named. And now Anamita says, this is not Sabina, this is Anamita. Community groups on Wednesday. That was yesterday. Reiterated that the governor must demand that the Teddy Roosevelt Wuhan virus positive personnel be kept on the ship and that all aboard the ship remain on the basis. Now, there's no attribution here. Community groups. Could that have been the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Knights of Columbus, the Rotary Club of Guam? So if it's community groups, you need to name them. If you have a source, you need to name it, Anamita. And your references have more credibility if there is a quote attributed to a person. But reading this, one gets the feeling that Anamita is on the same wavelength as the community groups. And the community groups said, Anamita, can you put this in the paper? And she says, sure. Community groups on Wednesday reiterated that the governor must demand that the Teddy Roosevelt Wuhan virus personnel be kept on the ship and that all aboard the ship remain on the bases. You just got to wonder where that came from. And then here is another quote. While our imbalanced relationship with the U.S. Department of Defense as an unincorporated territory has relegated our island and leaders with little authority, we continue to stress that great power rests with the governor. In no way did our request to protect the people of Guam deny service members protection. In fact, many of our members have family in the military. The groups said. So she got a direct quote from the groups, but she doesn't tell us who they are. We feel for the sailors aboard, but we don't have the resources to give that can accommodate an outbreak that is growing so rapidly that the ship's captain is pleading for more help from the Navy. And then this first sentence, while our imbalanced relationship with the Department of Defense as an unincorporated territory has relegated our island leaders with little authority. Well, the Admiral sat down and worked this out with the governor. And then this article in the paper goes on to say, community groups on Sunday sent a letter to the governor urging her to take a harder stance regarding the military's Wuhan virus procedures on Guam. The governor on Monday responded, stating that Guam must act as one, civilian and military, to overcome the Wuhan virus pandemic. So if you're talking about community groups, Anamita, we'd kind of like to know who they are, or at least who one of them is, or give us a name or something like that. Okay, that's enough of Sabina Paris. Then I go on to, okay, we got the 7th inning stretch coming up here.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call them at 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
So here we are, all by our lonesomes, out in the center field bleachers at Wrigley Field in Chicago. Not a soul out here in center field. Hard to do the seventh inning stretch when there's no baseball game, but we always overcome here on Tall Tales. I'm going to go back to the Facebook comments here. Some really good, interesting comments coming up here. Starting out with let's see here. Okay, I got a couple of calls coming in here. I got a John and somebody else. Who is the somebody else? I guess I got to wait for a minute on that. Good afternoon, John.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for talking about Sabina Perez, but she's not the only senator who's failing the people of Guam. Where are they at now? They're at home. The people of Guam need to realize that these wackos need to be voted out this November and vote for Moylan's bill to make them part-time.
Here,
How long
John.
have they been out already? They've been out for more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we
This
have a...
shows that we don't need them. Part-time, stop. They're getting paid. Today was payday for Gov Guam. How about the rest of us? Zero. It's just crazy. So the people of Guam need to know and remember Sabina Perez and the rest of these senators. But most important, remember that they stopped us from catching local fish. They want us to eat imported fish. Bob, I'm here again at my shop, and the phone is ringing off the hook. I have a long list of phone numbers, and they want local fish. So thanks, Bob. Keep it up.
Will do,
I'm glad
John.
This is happening. I'm glad the people of Guam are hearing this. Thank you.
Okay, John. Thanks for calling in here. Okay, so one of our posters is going to get his wish because I have a caller online right now who has demonstrated a degree of knowledge, expertise, depth of depth of understanding, savoir-faire, and articulation that makes him a favorite of our Tall Tales International radio listening audience. Welcome aboard, Frenchie.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Fine.
One small request. So don't force the real Joe Cruz to sing, because I've seen every time you force him to sing, we have rain showers. So we have to be very careful about that.
I'll remember that, Frenchie.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting, this morning I was reading the Guam Post column about the senator, which we were talking about yesterday. And so I answered to it, and I think quite a lot of people saw it. But to go back to who is really Mrs. Perez, and yesterday I kind of touched that a little bit, and so I went back to my files and everything in my office about the International Women's Network Against Militarism, which the senator is a member for more than 10 years, and she actually writes for them. She's writing their column called Recollection, which is basically taking all the Bevacquois' point of view and applying it to basically stopping the military from, or even having the military to leave. Now, this group it was founded back in the early 90s after a meeting, and you're going to love this one, a United Nations meeting conference on women in Heru, China. And as soon as they came back, the women started organizing in Korea and Okinawa. Surprise, surprise. And then the Philippines. And at the time, it was with the U.S. So it was East Asia and the U.S. And the U.S. was then split in pieces. The U.S. was split with Puerto Rico, the U.S., Hawaii, and Guam, because Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Guam all have beaching issues that they are trying to use, and they're using the same old arguments that they've been using since the 60s. And you're going to love this, because the person that started this is a professor at the Denver University named Gwynne Kirk, who actually is half Chamorro. And she's in her 60s now, but she's a leftist. And she is very tied to the Peace and Security Founders Group, which is a group tied to the Institute for Policy Studies, which started one of the biggest groups that was against the war in Vietnam, while you guys were sacrificing your lives in order to keep communists away. And has evolved over the years. But one of the things that all those groups have in common is that they're getting money from a very dear friend of the United States, the Open Society of George Soros. So they're all tied up. It's actually quite fascinating. And when you see their plan of action and all the things that they are trying to do is basically to remove U.S. forces from Korea, from Japan, from Okinawa, from Guam, and everything. And there is only one country or two that will benefit from that. And this is who Mrs. Perez is. And she's been a very active member. She's participated in symposium. She's writing for them. She's lecturing. Here on Guam, she has gone to the PBS show called Beyond the Fence, which keeps on pushing all those issues. And basically, they are very open about how to approach this. They are using sexism, saying the military are pimps, and they are bringing prostitutions. They are using saving the water, saving heritage, saving the environment, but only with one goal in mind: get rid of the military. And that's who those people are. And that's why this morning, when I was answering in the Post, I was saying that she has a huge conflict of interest. And one big issue is that the media has not done due diligence regarding those senators. And then you see Taitano. She also is one of the founders of the Save Retidian, what you call that group. You mentioned it earlier in the show.
Protehe Latexan, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. She's one of the founding members. And so all those people, they make a multitude of small non-profit organizations, which gives the impression that there are many of them, but there is only a couple of hundred people. And that's the same thing they have done in Okinawa. Now, in Okinawa, it's more grave because, as you mentioned several days ago, a lot of the anti-military people in Okinawa are communists. And there is a long tradition of North Korea infiltrating communist agents in Japan and the outlying islands, which Okinawa is part of. So this is the people we are dealing with. And yesterday you said, yeah, they're useful idiots. I think it goes further than that. They know exactly what they're doing. They're willful participants in trying to deconstruct our society. And they know exactly what they're doing. They have a method to go about it. And one of them is to put some of their people in elected official posts. And that's why we have two very active leftists in the Senate in this session. And then if you add Biscott Lee, who is also one of those head pushers against, it's quite amazing. We are facing a bunch of termites that are trying to take over the government of Guam. And that's basically, and one thing that was very funny that I found, apparently those groups are very good at sending letters. Back in 2010, they even sent a letter to President Obama and his wife, Michelle, when they stopped on Guam to refuel. It's typical communist propaganda, grinding down things over and over and over again. But they never tell you who they really are. They want you to believe they're somebody else. So when Senator Perez said she's worried about the people from Guam, number one, she lies because she is only worried about Chamorros. She doesn't give a damn about Filipinos, Haoles, Taiwanese, Koreans, Japanese on Guam. And it's a majority of people. All those minorities are a majority of people. She doesn't care about us. She wants a Guam where we're not there, where they're going to seize our property and get rid of us. And these people are really extremists. When you start reading carefully what they're pushing, they are really hardcore extremists. And, they have plenty of, they're tied to the WPR, which is the Women, Militarism, and Violence Institute. And all those people are working in one goal in mind, just get rid of the military and deconstruct the country. And they are doing it at every level. And you will love this since yesterday or the day before we were talking about Lou as the chief of state. In their conference on November 2013, they said they had representatives from 8 countries: the Philippines, Guam, Japan, Okinawa, South Korea, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and the United States. So they're taking Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and Guam out of the U.S. and Okinawa out of Japan. And that makes 8 countries, which actually we're talking about 3 countries. But this is typical of what they do, and it's relentless. And they have allies, and for 10 years they were able to stay at University of Guam under the protection of the president there, and who is a big part of it too. So this is very worrisome in many, many ways.
Interesting comments, Frenchie. Very interesting indeed. I'm going to try to get a hold of some of those publications that you're citing to and kind of get up to speed myself.
I will try to email you because actually yesterday I went through I have a whole file for this, and it's actually 350 page.
Wow.
Which I had printed earlier from their websites and things. And, they're tied up to all kind of far-left groups like Common Dreams and Peace and Security, Institute for Women Policy Research, and it's all those non-profit groups that are very nefarious and not at all open about what they are doing and what their intentions are. Not at all. So that's it. So you have to promise you don't force Real Joe to sing, right? Because I want to go in my garden this evening, and I don't want to be ran down.
Louie, Louie.
Louie, Here he goes.
Watch me now, watch me.
He's hard to control, Frenchie, but I'll get a hold of him. Thanks. Thanks
You have
a
a good
lot.
afternoon.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for sharing all your very interesting caller, Frenchie. I gave him a pretty good build-up, and he did not disappoint. He has a lot of knowledge about a couple of our senators, Senator Sabina Paris and Senator Kelly Titano, a couple of leftists. My analysis at the beginning of this legislature, remember how excited we all were? Oh, we have 10 women in our legislature. We couldn't talk about anything else for 6 weeks. We didn't talk about bills or the speaker. All we could talk about, we have 6 women. 6 women. 10 women. 10 women. And my analysis was that the anti-American fight would be fought in terms of culture and environment. And that's exactly the way it's turned out. Now there is a new means of carrying the message forward, and that is keep these sailors out of here because we don't want Wuhan virus. So they shouldn't be here at all because they're gonna get us all sick. Send them off, send them home. Unfortunately for them, the governor has apparently dropped out of the group because even Sabina Paris turned on the governor in that article I just read. Okay, so we're coming up to the home stretch here, and I'll be back in just a few minutes.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. Not a soul at the racetrack, not even a single horse. That wasn't a real bugler you heard playing Call to the Post. That was a recording. I just had to let you in on that. Okay, that means I got about 7 minutes to go. I don't think I want to start this item on the card here. Dealing with the, I was talking with Ray this morning about this article that appeared in the Post about the coronavirus coup. Authoritarians around the world seize the moment. And the article talks in terms of how various people have taken the powers provided in light of the Wuhan virus and expanded their powers. And that's a really good lead-in for me to talk about Governor Leon Guerrero and the open government law. But I want to spend a little time on that, so I don't want to start it today. I'll just go back. Some more interesting Facebook comments here. Starting out with Andrew. Has anyone heard Real Joe Cruz wailing and singing the blues? He's usually quite jolly. he eats a red-hot tamale and never has blown a fuse. So your singing talents have attracted some attention there, Real Joe Cruz.
Don't quit my day job, sir.
Yeah, your day jobs, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, and then Carl comes back and said, all this is happening under the surface without the public being aware of it. Talking about Sabina Paris and Taitano, the lefties, and what Frenchie was talking about. Carl says, and all this is happening under the surface without the public being aware of it. The Antonio Gramsciites are at work in our local and national institutions. And once again, where is the media here? Who's asking these hard, incisive questions other than the folks here on Tall Tales and on The Point, as you were on the Ray Gibson show first thing in the morning? Nobody. Then we can always count on Jesse Limtiaco. Let me see if this is part of a chain here. Carl Nelson, our Carl says, wow, excellent comments. I will re-listen, referring to Frenchie. And then James Howard says, Robert Underwood is the mole. Oh my gosh. And then Jesse Limtiaco comes along and says, what about the marginalization of the Chamorro people? And of course, this is kind of like the catechism if you want to participate in grievance politics. You have to be able to spit out the words marginalization of Chamorro people at the drop of a hat. And you have to appear to be serious as you say it. And you expect that when you say that, others will become apologetic. Oh, yeah, the margin, that's really too bad. Good try, Jesse, but it doesn't work very well here. Marginalization of the Chamorro people. That's right up there with tossing around the words colonizer, the colonizer, and some of the other things that are part and parcel of the separatist arsenal, as Frenchie so aptly stated it, all in the attempt to deconstruct the governmental system that we have here. Get rid of the military, deconstruct our democratic capitalistic system so we can move on to something much, much better, some sort of a utopia. And of course, the folks the folks over there on Jesse's side, don't tell us what this independent Guahan would look like, what kind of government we'd have. Although I suspect that the folks who are the prime movers here know exactly what kind of government they would like to see in place. But if that were known, it would make it very difficult for them to gather more support as they talk about the marginalization of the Chamorro people, which is one of the key phrases here. Jesse Limtiaco, can you be a dual national and still be loyal to America? Yes, you can, Jesse. So then he goes on to say, so the marginalization of the Chamorro people didn't happen. Okay, are we ready for this? So the marginalization of the Chamorro people didn't happen. No, it did not happen, Jesse. The marginalization of the Chamorro people did not happen. Now, you have to be very careful about who you get into discussions with, because when you have a loaded word like marginalization, anyone who agrees to your question, anyone who agrees to entertain your question, isn't going to be able to deal with the point that you're trying to put across. So no, there was no marginalization of the Chamorro people. The marginalization occurs right here at the end of Tall Tales. We've reached the final margin of Tall Tales, but have no fear, we'll be back tomorrow. See you then.